Welcome to this episode of The Good, the Bad and the Odd One Out with your host Mark. This has been a long time since I've done one of these. This is another Star Trek episode. Now, I'll be covering the last 13 episodes of Season 5, the second half of Season 5, in effect. Now, it's been about 11 months since I did the last recording, which was the first half. So, man, I've been really slow here. Just about a bit more than one episode a month, which is terrible progress. I just, it's life, right? Life gets in the way. That's what that is. However, I've got the 13 episodes to discuss here. So let's jump right into it. Episode 14 of Season 5 is called Conundrum. Now, this is an episode where the crew somehow get their memories erased and they can't remember what they've got to do, but they kind of vaguely know how to do it. And this turns out to be an alien sort of, specifically an alien thing to try and get them suckered into a war. So that don't remember they're the Federation, this, that, and the other. This is an interesting one. It's not a great episode, but it's an interesting one. For example, it's kind of cool that Worf immediately takes charge because he's like the more dominant personality once they've all been kind out, and it's interesting to see Picard to be his inferior officer. That's kind of interesting. He just takes that role, and it's also interesting that Riker is very Rikery in that he's kind of jumps into bed with Ensign Ro. Because he can't remember who he is or any relationship he had. And obviously he has a relationship ongoing thing with Troy, but in this one he jumps into bed with Ro. And it's kind of funny. And there's a thing at the end where they all got their memory back and the two women kind of confront Riker, and it's kind of a fun bit to see that. Troy does some very passive aggressive jealousy stuff too that's kind of fun. In fact, this weird little love triangle outstages the main plot, in fact, because it becomes a bit dull. It's good to see in some Ro. I do like her. She wasn't in many episodes, but I kind of think she's a good presence. So not a great episode, but one to see if you want to see Riker being Riker. Is a classic Riker kind of episode. Riker's got some quite amusing ones with the stuff he gets. The story meanders about a bit, but once you realise what's going on, it actually improves a little. But as I say, it's not a great episode. I'd probably give it 4 out of 10. So let's get on to the next one. Episode 15 of Season 5 is called Power Play. Again, a mediocre episode. In this one, it appears that Troy, Data and O'Brien kind of get possessed by aliens or overtaken by alien intelligences and try and get the Enterprise to free these entities that are stuck on this planet. It's kind of a prison planet or a containment planet, but 3 of the entities possess Troy, Data and O'Brien. Now, this one had potential, I should say. Spiner acting non-Data-ish is always going to be interesting. And O'Brien being the alien who possesses a form but has to be kind of threatening to his wife and baby as a hostage and kind of having to deal with that it was okay, but it could have done way better and been much more interested, and it could have gone a lot darker, this one actually, but it kind of backed away and skipped over stuff by the end. It's interesting to see Marina Sirtis, who plays Troy, doing something quite different. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, there was more potential in this than was realised, I'd say. I'd say this is fun. The bit that I like best is probably the earliest bit, very early, where the mutiny just kicks off without any sort of notification. It's kind of unexpected and kind of fun. So yeah, okay, that's that one. Episode 16 is Ethics. This is a Worf-centric kind of episode. He gets paralysed, decides to commit ritual suicide, so there's that. The dynamic of Worf deciding to do this, but leaving his son behind, but there's also a bit where Crusher has to deal with this researcher who seems to be taking risks with people's lives. There's individual bits of this episode I really liked. Crusher getting properly salty and angry about this smirky researcher lady and her cavalier attitude. That was kind of cool. And Riker basically telling Worf it's a bad, terrible decision. He has to think about what he's doing. It's not just about honor. He's got a small child to sort of care for. And basically Worf asks Riker to assist him in his suicide. And Riker pulls out the old Klingon rulebook and says, no, the only one who can assist you is your small son. You have to ask him to help you. So yeah, there was that. There was also quite a touching little bit where Worf's son Alexander thought his father had died. But then Worf suddenly asks him to help him with his recovery. And we see him assisting in Worf's recovery. That's quite a nice touch in what was otherwise a mediocre episode. It was all a little undercooked or irresolute, really. I would have liked to have seen a bit more development on the Crusher and the Rogue Researcher stuff. Great setup and everything, but just executed poorly. Gates McFadden as Crusher does a really quite good job in this one. It's a shame they did give her more stuff like this. So she really gives it her all, and yeah, I think it's good. I also quite like Frakes in his sort of role. He could have been a little better, but pretty good. I think that may have worked better if Patrick Stewart had been asked to do that job with Worf. It would have been way, way stronger, perhaps, but it was okay. Yeah, I'd say this is a 5 out of 10, probably something like that. It's just the actual premise and story could have been great, but the storytelling was a little weak. Okay, number 7 is The Outcast. Now, from the précis of the episode, I was expecting something goofy and sort of a bit sort of edgy and lascivious and stuff like that. The précis is Riker falls in love with an androgynous alien during their efforts to rescue others of the same race who are trapped in null space. Yeah, that sounds like it could be a kind of comedy episode or a WTF episode. Actually, no, I was wrong-footed. This was a very well-written piece, in my opinion. It's about the nature of it. It's about what happens to people that don't fit into the norms of their society and have to hide in the shadow. It's basically an allegory of sort of homosexuality in sort of previous generations, I believe, and maybe unfortunately in some places now as well. And I think the issues it dealt with the issues quite well. It was a cerebral episode, rather fine, very high. Yeah, 8 out of 10, I'd say. The way it was handled was very well done. I mean, this was controversial, I suspect, back in 1991. Probably not so much now, but it was I don't know, I hate to use the word brave when it's about a TV show, but I think it was kind of, they were putting their necks out a bit on this one. Didn't feel preachy. It straddled the middle ground very nicely. It avoided being preachy, it avoided being blanding it up too much, didn't hide it specifically away, and it's in many respects a quintessential Star Trek episode. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It was kind of funny that Troy didn't even notice Riker was flirting with someone else, and she's supposed to be telepathic. That was kind of funny. Number 18 was Cause and Effect. Now, this is Star Trek doing Groundhog Day, basically. It starts with sounds appearing in Dr. Crusher's bedroom, and then she tries to work out what it is, and each iteration of the day they're going through, they sort of uncover more and more. Frakes directed this one, and Kelsey Grammer's in it. In a very interesting uniform. I'll say no more than that. And Gates McFadden is given a bit more to do again in this episode than usual, and she delivers well. So I'd say she's got some good episodes in season 5, actually, Gates McFadden. There's also there's some poker action that just illustrates how terrible these guys are at poker. They constantly put big money in when they've got nothing in their hands, and then they fold to tiny bets when there's a massive pot because they appear to have been bluffed out. And it's like, even if you're almost certain he's got a hand, when it's a big pot and you just got a bit more to put in, just put the money in, for goodness sakes. So I'd say this is 5 out of 10 sort of episode. Episode 19 was called The First Duty. Now, this one, we get Wesley back for a bit. So there's an accident. Wesley's in sort of training. There's an accident. And he's been lying about. Wesley's been lying about. Picard sort of figures it out, though he hasn't got absolute hard evidence, and talks to Wesley about it, and Wesley comes clean, and he gets his superior expelled, and he's have to redo the year. So that feels like a bit of a holiday to me, if you've already did the well. However, actually, you know what? I'm kind of kidding. This was a pretty good one. I like Ed Lauter, the actor Ed Lauter. He's in this. We get Ray Walston too. And it's Wesley and this crew doing this cover-up. It kind of works okay. A lot of the individual scenes were reasonably well written and good, but it suffered in a couple of ways. Firstly, Wesley was really out of character in this. We're so used to him being the Boy Scout character that it just doesn't feel genuine what's going on. The fact he'd hide stuff like this. Though, you got to remember he's older and, becoming a bit more worldwide, so there's a bit of that. The problem I had really was, one of the other problems I had was Wesley only confesses because he's caught, not because of his ethical compass, and I didn't really like that. It didn't work for me. It's another symptom of it just feels like not like a Wesley sort of action. So there is that problem. There was a few other things that, for example, we needed to see the leader deliver a speech that was referred to at the end. How it all turned out. We should have seen that actor deliver that speech, but instead we just get a second-hand account of it. I don't understand why you do that. That kind of makes the drama dissolute and kind of wrecks it a bit. But having said that, I still really quite like this episode, even though it's got some big old shortcomings. I'd give this a 7 out of 10. Number 20 is cost. It's called The Cost of Living. This was a bad one. It had weak plot lines, a little dramatic tension, and there were some real WTF moments. Lwaxana Troi is kind of getting married to this pompous guy that she doesn't really care about, and he doesn't care about her. And it's kind of a form thing. She doesn't want to be alone or something. But in the meantime, we also get a subplot of Alexander, Worf's son Alexander, little Alexander, and Worf not getting on with each other. And also, there's another subplot, which is this weird metal-eating goo is having a go at the Enterprise. But this becomes such a weird sort of half-hearted thing that rather than be adding to the drama, it's just something they kind of don't really care about and doesn't really get referred to. There were some particularly bad points in this one, but thinking back on it makes me laugh. Lwaxana takes the kid Alexander to this pleasure world. I think it's in the holodeck. I can't remember now if it's a holodeck or she takes it. I think it's the holodeck. She takes the little kid and they both strip naked and get in a mud bath. Yeah, and then it's so weird. There's another bit where Worf and Alexander get made to sign a contract with each other by Troi to sort of respect each other, which is very non-Klingon. Didn't feel right. And then finally, Lwaxana Troi turns up naked at her own wedding, and not only is she naked, she sashays down and winks at the kid as she walks up the aisle, which is really weird. It's a bit frankly, but I'd give it a 2 out of 10. Yeah, okay. So there's some low points in this second half of 5, but we are coming to some high points. That I must stress, not every episode is terrible. In fact, we've already had some decent ones. Episode 21 is called Perfect Mate. This is Star Trek Next Generation having a go at the classic Tristan and Isolde story. With some success. We get Famke Janssen appearing, very young here. She's it's good to see her. She's very charismatic, Famke Janssen. She's this empath character who is one side of a love pairing, and then she somehow gets attracted to Picard. And their sort of interplay becomes sort of central. Now, this should have been a great episode, actually. I mean, when you have Picard in this kind of thing and there's this kind of drama, it should have been a better episode. But unfortunately, the writing was weak and the direction was flat. It could have been great, as I say, but it never really flies. And I can't blame the actors for that, because they're both good actors and they both gave it their all, but it's just not put together well. There is a good fun moment with Picard, though, where we see it. He gets asked how he resisted the empath, and he just has a sort of stone face. But you can kind of see in his eyes, and you can tell what he's thinking. Mainly because Patrick Stewart is such a great actor, that kind of work. So, yeah. There was also a weird sort of male fantasy vibe. This beautiful woman throwing herself at this guy in authority. It just felt like a Mills and Boone kind of thing. It's quite a weak episode. Not as bad as the one before, I must stress. But, yeah, I'd probably give it 5 out of 10. Okay, so the next episode, 22 in this series, is called Imaginary Friend. Now, I'm starting to feel like the showmakers are getting punchy at this point. This is another clunker. This is about children or a child interacting with an alien entity, and who interprets the way children are treated by society as a hostile act. Well, discipline is seen as a hostile act. It's interesting that one of the girls we see in this, one of the children, the alien entity acting as children, is actually the girl who became Tommy's girlfriend in The Third Rock from the Sun. And she's a very aggressive, pushy child. She's good. She's a good actress, a good little actress in this. Although the other little girl who was like the main character in this is kind of sweet and quite nice in the role, and it was kind of a nice touch here. We see a bit of development of Worf's character, actually, where he finds the girls in an area they shouldn't be, and instead of being all Worf-like and sort of telling them off and being all security-like, he just lets them go. So let's just say no more about it. I kind of like that moment, but apart from that, it wasn't a great episode. Probably a 3.5 out of 10 kind of episode. Okay, now brings us to episode 23 called Eyeball. Now, this is a very strong one. I actually thought this was a very, very good episode. Top tier Star Trek, in fact. This one's got a solid story, drama, and it's a Borg episode, which are always great, but it's something different. It's a different approach to the Borg. Basically, they find this lone Borg, and they start to educate him. So it's got a touch of the Flowers for Algernon about it. He kind of, you know what? This episode reminded me of an episode of Doctor Who when Christopher Eccleston played the Doctor, where he met the Dalek. It was called an episode called Dalek, and he meets the Dalek and sort of talks to the Dalek, but the Dalek identifies the flaws in the Doctor too. It's kind of interesting. And it feels like that episode of Doctor Who was kind of riffing on this a bit. There's a similarity here. There's also some good stuff with Picard and Guinan where their character development really works. And we find out a little more about the Borg. They're not necessarily as machine-like as we've been shown at this point. They've got some humanity in them, and we find that with this particular entity. 9 out of 10, possibly even a 10 out of 10. It's interesting that Picard's got this commitment to the Federation's values, but he also loathes the Borg. So he kind of has to balance that with him. And also, I remember, I think Guinan really pulls off some interesting stuff in this. She's got a kinship with Picard about, they're both survivors of Borg attack, so there is that. It's a smart episode, it's thought-provoking, and it feels quite Roddenberry-ish. So, I mean, it's got all that going for him. I remember the first time I saw it, I didn't think that much of it, actually. I thought it was a little underworld. I thought it was going to be in a big, exciting Borg episode. But, man, this one grows on you. It definitely does. And, I think it might possibly be one of the best episodes, Borg episodes, maybe. So, yeah, really, really interesting. There's some interesting stuff with Picard and Guinan and the carrot and the rest of the crew in dealing with this sort of entity. There's a real humanity to this one. Okay. Episode 24, the next phase. Very solid. And it's close to great, but it's not quite there. Basically, we get Ro Laren again into Ro, and I think this might be our very last episode she appears in, actually. Geordi and Ro Laren kind of get dimensions shifted or something. Everyone thinks they've died, but they get to watch everyone's reactions. They're like slightly out of time or something. There's some quite good, solid character development and writing for the characters in this. And when you mix it in with it, there's a race against the clock kind of crisis moment caused by the sneaky old Romulans that kind of add to the tension. It's unfortunately, I think this one needed a little more time than their usual 42 minutes or whatever. It could have done with a little more time. So they lost. They basically had to come up with an ending when I think there was still room for even more character development. But you know what? I've got no complaints. I mean, it did fall a little flat in the direction, possibly, where what should have been building tension was dissipating tension. The way it was sort of cutting and so on. But having said that, I still think it's a very, very solid episode. I'll give it 8 out of 10. Episode 25 is The Inner Light. This one's kind of a famous one. We see the meme of Patrick Stewart playing a flute. It's just one of those things. And this is the episode it's from. And my feeling is I personally should like this one more. Picard gets zapped by an alien and is flat unconscious on the bridge and they're trying to recover him. But the aliens sort of mind manipulated him, and it turns out he appears to be on a planet. He kind of was aware of what he was. And the suggestion is that's a dream. And he basically lives out a whole life on this planet that's sort of dying of sort of lack of water. But he's trying to do his utmost using science and so on to sort of improve things. He has a wife, and then he has a grown-up daughter and son and stuff like that. And we get to see him as a village elder and trying to sort of influence things. It's a very Roddenberry one, and it's got a touch of the Twilight Zone about it, really has. Though I have to say I found bits of it quite undramatic, though I really did like the final shots of him playing the flute at the end. And I have to say the music throughout this episode was quite impressive and fitting rather good. Many people consider this one of the great episodes, but I can think of quite a few better ones that I personally prefer, to be honest. So, I think in most places this is 9 or 10 out of 10. But for me, it's an 8 out of 10. I found it all a bit saccharine and maudlin is probably a better word. I found it a little maudlin. Which brings us to the final episode, episode 26, Time's Arrow Part 1. No, so this is a cliffhanger kind of episode, end of season. So, and I haven't watched the second one, and I have a long time ago, but I can't quite remember what happened. But it starts with kind of a big mystery. They basically find in an old archaeological dig on Earth Data's head, but dated back from the 19th century, and there's this big conundrum of what on earth happened. So we get That's interesting. The Data's both intrigued because of, the central mystery of how did he go back in time and get his head get there, but also Data's sort of addressing the fact he is mortal. He has got a finite life, and everyone thought he'd just go on and on forever. And he notices people were treating him differently. So there's some nice writing there. But there's all sorts going on. There's dimension shifting stuff. There's weird aliens, a life-draining couple. And there's even Mark Twain thrown in too. I really liked how Data explained himself when he started talking in the 19th century. People were having trouble following him or thought he talked weird by just saying he's French. It definitely reminded me a bit in the original series, City on the Edge of Forever, where they have to explain Mr. Spock away as Chinese and he got his head caught in an automatic rice picking machine. That kind of made me laugh, and Data saying he's French was kind of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the second part of this, and I'll probably when I get around to it, I'll probably watch this one again. Anyway, I'll give this one 7 out of 10. Okay, so that finishes my thoughts on the second half of season 5 of Star Trek Next Generation. I will try and produce or put out more Star Trek episodes, certainly put out more frequently Star Trek episodes to get on with the whole Star Trek thing. However, I'm going to take a short sort of sideline break from Next Gen for the next phase of this. I'm covering a show that I didn't know it even existed, but it is on YouTube and I've sort of wanted to cover it, which is, there's basically a fan-made version of the original series which plots the remaining 2 years of the 5-year mission. Because the first 3 series of Star Trek Star Trek, the original series, are held to be the first 3 years of the 5-year mission, but someone's come back and done the final 2 years, as it were, in a show called Star Trek Continues, and it's meant to be quite good, and I kind of want to watch it. There's different characters playing different actors playing the characters, different Kirk, different Spock, and so on. But I think it's got some potential, and I kind of want to sort of take a sideline into that. I would have done it earlier if I'd have known about it, but I didn't. So I'm going to take a sideline into that before I come back to Star Trek Next Generation Season 6. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and bye from me.
Star Trekking across the universe. On the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk. Star trekking across the universe. Slowly going forward, 'cause we can't find reverse. Lieutenant, report. There's Klingons on the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bow. There's Klingons on the starboard bow, Jim. Analysis. Mr. Spock.
It's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, not as we know it. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, Captain.
There's Klingons on the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bow. There's Klingons on the starboard bow, Jim. Star trekking across the universe. On the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk. Star trekking across the universe. Only going forward, still can't find reverse. Medical update, Dr. McCoy.
It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead.
It's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, not as we know it. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, Captain.
There's Klingons on the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bow. There's Klingons on the starboard bow, Jim. Starship Captain James T. Kirk.
Ah, we come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace, shoot to kill, men.
It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead.
Well, it's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, not as we know it. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, Captain.
There's Klingons on the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bow. There's Klingons on the starboard bow. Scrape them off, Jim.
Star trekking across the universe.
On the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk.
Star trekking across the universe.
Slowly going forward and things are getting worse.
in peace. Shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace. Shoot to kill. Scotty, beam me up.
It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead.
Well, it's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Not as we know it. Not as we know it. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Not as we know it, Captain.
There's Klingons on